When I was 17, my mother nearly died of liver failure. My brother's father passed away 3 months ago from alcohol abuse. I was sexually harassed by a boy I dated because he was addicted to pornography. These are some of my personal experiences with addiction, and I'm positive that my story isn't an anomaly in this class. It is imperative for people to understand the serious and sometimes permanent consequences of addiction, especially as addiction increases to directly and indirectly impact the lives of young adults and teenagers, whether it's a parent, a friend, or oneself personally that is affected by addiction. It runs rampant in both the United States and the world. While I personally am no medical expert or trained professional, I have done a considerable amount of research into addiction as a result of my close encounters with addicts to various substances and practices. I've even gone to an AA meeting or two with my mom, which has been very informative. By the end of this speech, you will understand two of the most prominent biological consequences of addiction on the brain. You will see how addiction can hijack the limbic system and learn how addiction can damage the prefrontal cortex. So let's take a look at some of the ways in which addiction affects more than just people's behavior. Addiction hijacks the limbic system. In healthy brains, this system functions as a pleasure-reward circuit, in other terms. Basically, it rewards one with dopamine, a neurochemical in the brain, for doing pleasurable activities such as sex, eating, and socializing, to name a few. It also helps us distinguish between positive and negative emotions. So in other words, it encourages us to repeat activities that bring positive emotions and avoid ones that bring negative emotions. In unhealthy brains, however, this system does not function properly. Dopamine production is slowed overall because of the increase in dopamine that happens when one engages in an addictive behavior, especially in the long term, and especially in excess. In addition, pleasure receptors in the brain are also numbed. This has dramatic consequences to one's daily life. For example, things that used to bring addicts pleasure, such as swimming or any number of hobbies, sports, interacting with friends and family, all of these things don't bring addicts pleasure any longer because of this dopamine, in excess of dopamine. This can lead to depression and anxiety, to name two mental health consequences. Tolerances are also developed, leading to more extreme addictive behaviors as addicts need more and more to get their fix of essentially dopamine and good emotions. Now that we've discussed how addiction influences the limbic system, let's talk about how it influences a specific part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is in the front of the brain, about right here. It fully develops around age 25, which means that through young adulthood and through your teenage years, of course your childhood as well, your prefrontal cortex is still developing. This is what helps you make decisions that are wise. So, for example, in healthy brains, one might be at a store and they might be looking at a dress that is hundreds of dollars past their budget. In a healthy prefrontal cortex, one would be able to make this decision wisely and perhaps decide that the dress they want to buy is out of their budget and thus won't do it. However, in the brains of addicts, this region is extremely underactive. NIH's National Institute on Drug Abuse, Nora Valkow, says that brain imaging studies support this statement. This means that addicts have a much more difficult time recognizing the risks and ultimate consequences of their addiction, and are thus much less able to make the decision to stop. We have developed a greater comprehension of two of the most significant effects that addiction has on the brain. We have learned how addiction can rewire and shape the brain, specifically how it can alter the pleasure-reward circuits in the brain, and how it can prevent or impair proper development of the prefrontal cortex. As addiction continues to affect young people, these are essential facts to know when looking at whether or not to engage in addictive behavior. Experiences with addiction, such as mine, are clearly commonplace. Maybe some of you can even empathize with what I shared. If that's the case, though, there's hope for people like you and me. With knowledge about its consequences, we can make the choice and do the work to end the cycle of addiction today.